Hey everyone, welcome to the Do the Thing podcast. This is your host, Stacey Lauren. Oh my gosh, you guys, I love doing fun things because I met our next guest through a Toastmasters club that I've been involved with. And we did this amazing interview, back in November with her and her husband. They've been married for 41 years. And if you have not listened to it yet, you have to check it out. It's episode number 89 on the Do the Thing podcast. And it has been probably one of our most popular episodes because people really resonated with that message of marriage takes work. It's not like you can just look at someone that's been married for 41 years and say, oh, they are so lucky. No, you put in the work. If you want it to be a happy marriage and you want to be fulfilled by the time that you're spending together and be intentional, they go through all the tools and the strategies on how to do that. And I really thought that was such an empowering message. And we recently met for a breakfast the other day, and we were talking just about her new phase in life and what she's looking to do now. And we were talking about just even the Do the Thing community because she's been exposed to that. And there's just so many things that came up from that meeting that I just felt it was the perfect time to have her on here by herself and for us to just be able to talk about all these things that are coming up for her and then the things that we're seeing sort of together through just our shared lens at wanting to kind of take this new step and inspiring others with our own lived experience. So I'm so excited to welcome Francine to the show. Hey, Francine.
Hey, Stacey. Thank you. This is so great. I feel very privileged to be speaking with you now.
Thank you. I feel privileged. I just feel like every time we're together, you are just this warming heart that we're able to just gravitate together. And it just feels so good whenever we're able to spend time together, whether in the podcast, not in the podcast. And it's been amazing to get to know you.
Thank you.
So I'd love to start off and just kind of talk about what we were talking about at breakfast and just maybe expanding on that conversation and tell me what is comfortable and what's not comfortable. But do you mind? Can we start with what you were talking about with that glass thing? Because I feel like that's something that so many people can resonate. And the way that you were described that visually, I think will really resonate with people.
Absolutely. That's great. So I was sharing with Stacey how I have this image that is a recurring image, much like a recurring dream. And it's not present all the time. But when it does happen, it's very noticeable. And what this image is me looking into a storefront, and inside the storefront is all of these things that are happening, but I can't seem to get in. So it's almost like this prison that's there. Fortunately, I don't live in there a lot, but it still exists throughout my whole life. So it's this place of separation and oh my God, there's just so much stuff happening in there. And how can I get in? And I want that, and I want that, and I want that. And oh my God, look at that, look at that, look at that, look at that. But yet so there's this place of inspiration, but it's also a place of disconnection.
And there's something so powerful about that. And I think that it happens to a lot of people, which is why I really was excited to talk to you about this, because I think a lot of us have this place, right, of having this lived experience, meaning we've gone through things in our lives. And then we see these connection points as we're going through things, right? And then you get to the point where you come through the other side of that, through the healing and through the growth and through all the work that we do. And then now it's like we want to almost attach a meaning to it, right? And to see, once you get to see that you're able to help someone by having walked through the thing that this other person is walking through, then it sort of turns this corner of wanting to help. And you used a term that I loved, and it was, you said something about raising your hand. And I'd love to just talk through this now, because I feel like that's kind of where you're at. And it's such a uncomfortable yet amazing, unbelievable place to be, because it's, you're in your next growth phase. That's what it is. When you speak to that, and I just got chills, so I'm on the right path. So it's like literally you're in this next growth phase. And that's why you're kind of feeling this disconnection, because you're trying to get there, but yet your safety's pulling you back in.
That is such a great description. And I can say, so first off, with raising your hand, if I look back on all of my journeys and adventures, they all started with that place of raising hand. And raising hand can be a lot of different things. It could be raising hand for an answer, raising hand for surrender. I just don't know anymore. And I raise my hand, but there is always an answer. And what happens is, even though I've had all these instances of answers and connections, I will forget that I need to do that. You just forget. And it's like you need to be reminded of the things that you already know and have lived through. So I don't know if that answers the question. Right now, I'm really facing something that image really fits in, that image of looking in, which is the podcast challenge. So I have had this idea about inspiration and wanting to really discover, what is inspiration? Can we make it happen? What is it? And so I started a project a few years back, and it was really great, and I was all involved, but then kind of went by the wayside. But now it's kind of come back. And with the podcast challenge, which I'm part of, I'm going to be using that inspiration project for my own podcast. But what's happened is I look and see, been just overwhelmed at the level of podcasts that are out there, the professionalism, even Stacy, what she's accomplished in the past year. So it's like that place of, can I do this? And the stoppage. But it really was starting from the place of raising my hand and saying, okay, what's next? I'm ready for what's next.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you're ready, but it's still scary. And you still don't know what you're getting into or what to expect. You just have this, I call it a rough draft goal of an idea of this inspiration project and wanting to be able to share this message, right? That's coming from your heart. But it doesn't mean that all these steps are lined out. You're figuring it out as you go.
That's right. That's right. And it's really talking about the other part of the hand raising of surrender. There was a time back, it's very clear, I think it was around 40, and we had lost everything. We lost our house, we lost our cars, we had moved into a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 kids. And I just remember just in this place of, oh my God, what's going to happen? And there was this place of just surrendering, like, okay, I don't know what's next. I surrender to the highest purpose, to my highest good, to whatever that is for me. And there was this feeling of peace that just enveloped me. I get shivers thinking about that. And of course, it was many years of working back and coming back and working through stuff. But there was this place of remembrance, and everything was going to be okay.
Yeah, this is interesting. I had explored surrender for a long time because I was originally thinking it might be a separate piece in the Do the Thing formula. And then I realized as I was doing more interviews and I had explored the topic with a few people that it went under mindset. And so in terms of surrender, it can be under mindset because it is a mindset. But the way that you're speaking to it now, it's adding a whole nother layer to me, because something I've been exploring is so many people are stopped by analysis paralysis because they have to know every step before they can move. But surrender really is figuring things out. And you'll notice that I have a few episodes that I just released recently, and those are specifically about figuring things out, because I realized that's such a powerful piece of the formula. But now I've just connected it to surrender, because in order to figure things out, you have to be able to surrender that the next step is going to come.
It comes from a deep knowing of, my view is that we are energy beings and we're connected to all. And there's many, many different paths and ways to all of that. And when we forget our connection to all that is where we become lost in the desert. All of the religions, they have the same thread that speak about the same thing, the same tapestry about connection. And when you really ask for connection back, so surrendering first to say, okay, I don't know what to do here or what my next action is. I mean, it could be something really small or it could be major life, but in that place of saying, okay, I surrender to something into my connection, whatever that may be for each individual. That is really when things really take a different course, and you're not in your suffering about all of it. Because it's really, you're suffering when you're disconnected.
I'd love to hear how you want to take this into the new podcast. So when you're doing the podcast challenge, how can you apply this idea of surrender and being able to kind of, is that what you're planning on doing, is sort of falling into this mantra?
Yes, absolutely. So I began the project a few years ago. I was with an amazing writing teacher, and she provided this cocoon of creativity. And it was really through the processes of writing, which was really my first foray into that formal writing, that this inspiration project came about. Because I feel I love when I'm inspired. Everything happens when you're inspired, whether it's an idea or an action. It's actually another state of being. I actually would describe it as a luminous expansion of self when you have inspiration. And then the definition of inspiration is to be breathed by the divine from one aspect of it. There's many definitions. So I thought that I would start interviewing people I thought were creative. And what was it that sparked that creativity? And how does inspiration feel to them? So I started a little bit. And again, I said I kind of left that. But now with this new format and podcasting, I thought, it's back again. I'm inspired again to do that, to really discover what is this thing called inspiration, this state. I mean, I think, wouldn't it be amazing if we could take a pill and we'd feel inspired and we could solve problems and be creative? And I mean, I could just imagine the advertisement, take Inspire and you'll be here. Side effects include big expansion.
I'm imagining too. So there's almost 1,000 people in the group now. It's a brand new community that was started just for this Start a Podcast Challenge. So there's going to be a lot of people that would, I'm sure, love to be interviewed by you on your podcast, because they're all in that space of being inspired and wanting to do this next thing. And I'm sure that glass analogy will be relevant to them as well, because like I said earlier, I don't think people realize the people that are doing the thing are also scared when they're doing it. And until they flex the muscle enough and they figured it out multiple times in the new thing they're doing, that's when the confidence starts to come. But it's still very scary when you're starting out. So anyway, I just thought this could be a good place for you to even just use the community as a way of inspiration, because I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of depth there for the people on the group.
I mean, for even Stacey, like when you're in an inspired state, it's quite different.
Yeah.
I mean, and can we cultivate it? Can we really bring it on? Now, there's directions, like, listen to music and take a walk, but still, it is something that comes on.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. One of my favorite books, Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert.
I've heard that now. It's my 4th time, so I have to read it now.
I would also recommend listening to her. She has this beautiful voice and the whole experience of listening. Anyway, she talks about how ideas come along and they tap you on the shoulder and they visit you. And if they find a home, they'll stay with you. But they'll just go on to the next person. Yeah. And she gives this amazing example in her life where she meets the author Ann Patchett. And she doesn't know her. She meets her incidentally at an event. And Elizabeth Gilbert is working on an idea for a novel, and that's over there. And Ann Patchett and Elizabeth Gilbert develop a relationship, and they develop an old-fashioned relationship where they are writing to each other over time. They both don't know that they're working on the different novels, their ideas. They never talk about that.
Yeah.
Comes to that Elizabeth has to put this novel away for life circumstances, and she comes to find out that Ann Patchett is working on the same exact idea and gets her novel published. She doesn't feel threatened or that it was stolen from her, but the point being that this idea landed on Elizabeth Gilbert, and then it just flew away and landed on someone else who was ready to take the idea. So it's just this, and ideas are always happening.
Yeah.
They're always there. And it's just really back to raising your hand, hey, I want an idea, and having that connection.
So this is so interesting because The thing that I love about my podcast is when those ideas come, I can reach out to someone like you, right? This is kind of what we're doing right now. We had already done a podcast episode. It was already amazing. We just went for lunch or breakfast, had an amazing conversation, and I'm wanting to explore some of the ideas more. The timing of us having this conversation, this specific one about raising your hand and then being stuck in the glass and looking out, is timed so perfectly with the Start a Podcast Challenge. So now we're with people that are really in that same similar spot in terms of both of those things. They want to get their voice out, but they're just held back. And this challenge they're hoping is going to ignite them to move forward. And they also have their hand raised because they're ready. And so by us now having this conversation, we're now not just living in a vacuum. It's not my idea and your idea. We're now co-creating. And then I'm going to be able to talk about it on my podcast. You're going to be able to talk about it on yours. And guess what? It's going to be totally different because I have my lens and you have your lens. And that's what's actually kind of beautiful about this as a vehicle, is because you now have this connection point with another, whereas in the story you gave, they're both living in this vacuum, right? And it's true, though. The idea went to her and then to the other, but now we're mixing them and we're able to co-create on something, just something I thought I would mention.
Oh, that's brilliant. As usual, Ms. Stacy. Really brilliant. And along with that is, if we can move into trust, to trust that idea is a good idea, or if we could have someone that will inspire us to move on the idea so that it doesn't get lost. So we have that record of it. Well, even in your own journal, writing things down, writing those ideas down, and just not worrying that you're not going to act on that. But can you imagine if every time you thought of something, you just put something down and then you let it go, and then you went back and said, that, and see what calls to you. Yeah.
Yeah. And the value to that, just so you guys listening know, I was never a journaler, and I don't know why I cannot write in a journal. I'm not sure what my deal is, but what I am good at is I can take my phone and I can talk into my phone and I can leave voice notes for myself. And sometimes I delete them because they're just crazy. Other times there's just random thoughts that are in my head that I never want anyone listening to. And other times I'll save them so I could listen back. And so whether your means is journaling, your means is voice noting, once you get those ideas out of your head, they're no longer living there and they're not stuck anymore, trapped. They're released and they go into whatever that form is that works for you. And then it's almost like you're being seen, even though it's by you, you're being seen by someone. And that just gives it a place to, like you said, live.
Yes. And I mean, you could also say that it becomes distinguished, where it's not out in the realm of things. One time I learned that the Eskimos have, and I don't know if this is a factual, but it sounded pretty good, that Eskimos have like 28 different distinctions for snow, and it helps them to live. But can you imagine us looking at snow? We would have maybe, 2 distinctions. So a distinction gives you power. And when you take the time to distinguish and really put things on record, that's where it begins to live, and it's not in the ethers.
Yeah. And the benefit to that is, and I'm speaking to this during the podcast challenge, so of course it's coming up perfect timing, or I should say divine timing, but is that the more clear your mind is, the more you're able to get your thoughts out of your head, the more room there is for whatever it is you want to do, for abundance. You have energy and it's clear and free. And it's just, I never realized how powerful that was until I was able to do the work that I did to be able to get everything out of my mind. So then I'm able to now just see all these connection points that are happening.
Oh my gosh, that is so true. I mean, how often do we hear clear your mind? We hear that, and there's so many processes available to do that. What comes to mind is Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, about doing morning pages. And you just sit down and you write for however amount of time, 3 pages, and it could just be like junk. And that like do a dump, especially if you want to clear. Of course, there's meditation.
Yeah.
There's so many things available to do that. It's just that we have to remember that we have to clear, that we have.
Well, and you bring up a good point, Francine. There's so many different ways. You don't need to get locked into one, because if it doesn't work for you, don't say, oh, I can't. Because I've been like that with meditating. Oh my God, I've tried every kind of meditation you can imagine. I am not a good meditator. I will just tell you that. But I could make that story believe that I'm not a good meditator. And I just said it, but it's not exactly true. I do it in different ways. I have a different level of meditation, not in the traditional one. And I think it's figuring out what your form is of whatever it is you want to do. Kind of like I said with journaling, right? My thing's not journaling. I do voice notes. It accomplishes the same goal. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, we talked about this with you and Steve on your episode, your husband, sorry, just for anyone listening, Francine's husband, because what you guys talked about a lot was coaching. And a lot of people will get divorced after therapy because they're like, oh, this didn't work. I worked with this therapist, so we must not be right for each other. Not realizing maybe you had the wrong therapist. Maybe you needed a coach instead. So I think this really brings up a lot of that. It's really getting to know yourself and what you need as a person. So then you're able to then move in whatever way you need to move. Don't get stuck in a box of, oh, this person did this, I must do it that way.
That's exactly right. And along with that is the trust. It's the trust of, if we can really open up the channel to the whispers of our heart, because everybody has the whispers, everybody. And you'll notice it when you've done something, and then a little bit later, you'll look back and go, oh, yeah, there was something that was a little bit of a red flag or something. But when we're our ego and we want to get something done, we're not going to listen. We're going to say, no, I don't like that. I don't like that. Nope. And then, so we have our own GPS system. And that's really talked about a lot. Esther Hicks is a teacher who talks about, she does channeling and does the Abraham teachings. And she talks about that our GPS system, our heart, will always have the answer. It's just a matter of clearing out what gets in the way and trusting and being able to really listen to those whispers, because it's all there. And the premise of all the teachings, which I totally love, one of my many teachers, is that we're here to experience joy. And there's just been this mistake about our existence. Now, of course, I say this from the situation of being in this level of privilege and blessing, and I can speak this from this experience, but we're all here to bring forth the joy. And the more that we each can do that, everywhere we go, we spread that. So it's not like to have this big, gigantic purpose, and it's really great when you do. But if we could just be responsible for our own peace, and everywhere we go, whether we go to the store, or we drive, or we move into bigger places of sharing and getting involved, it's always about here first. And the more that we can remember that we're really here for joy, we are.
Yeah. And joy from what we want internally, and not because we see someone else having it and we think that's what we want. It's really kind of uncovering what your true desires are.
Right. And, that's also another topic. What is joy? What does that really mean? But we have a sense of it when someone says to you, you feel joy, you know what the physical feeling of it is. Can we bring it on? And I think probably with joy, you probably can bring it on a little bit more easier than inspiration.
Yeah.
Still see mystery,
Yeah. I'd love to hear, so since you're starting this new venture with the Start a Podcast Challenge and you're starting your podcast, I'd love to maybe just talk about that for a minute. I wasn't planning on that specifically, but it feels like the timing is right. What do you think? You mentioned what's been getting in the way. It's from seeing everything else and looking around and then getting doubt that maybe comes with that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Technically, and I mean, I could never do what they do. And I listen to this podcast and oh my gosh, and all of that just so gets in the way. But then, once you start an action, it fades away. So it just takes the one action.
Yeah. You know what helped me? And I don't remember if you were at this Toastmasters when I did this, but it reframed everything for me. It was a prompt that maybe it was inspiration that day. But I was getting into speaking. I just joined Toastmasters. It was probably my second meeting. And I think I signed up for the role of inspiration. And I decided to look up public speaking. And I said a lot of ums. So at the time, I was like, I need to find evidence for someone that uses a lot of ums that's a speaker. And I ended up finding this TED Talk. And I think it was Amy Cuddy. She has like 5 million views on her TED Talk. And it was amazing. But it turned out she said a lot of ums. I had my daughter count them. I think it was like 35 ums. And I don't quote me, so don't need to write me if it's not right. But it was something like that. It was a lot of ums, but it was still an amazing speech. So I was able to find evidence for someone that was using a lot of ums that was an amazingly successful speaker. And I feel like maybe with the podcast challenge, that might be something I want to do as a dare, is finding a podcast, someone that maybe is in your field that you admire, that isn't all perfect technically.
That is, oh my gosh, that is so great. Absolutely. Speaking of, I'm in Toastmasters and giving a speech on Wednesday. So I've been watching TED Talks because I'm really stuck at one place in my speech. It's like I get there, la, 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 and then I'm like, I don't know where to go from here. So I'm looking and just watching these people who are so brilliant and easy and entertaining. And then I close it off and then I'm like, well, that didn't help. I'm stuck in this one place. So I think to really, what you just said would be so helpful to watch imperfection.
Yeah.
There really aren't a lot of imperfected talks on TED Talk. I don't think.
Yeah. And it's making me think, I read this book recently, Russell Brunson, I can't remember the name of the book, but he talks about how he started his business by doing a podcast, and it was called Marketing in His Car. He has $1 billion business now. This is how he started his business, is he started to share his ideas on his way to drop his kids off to school. And he recorded them, I think, on his phone. And it was on his commute time, 10 minutes a day. And I need to find his podcast to share it with people, because if Russell Brunson started $1 billion business by marketing in his car, and the audio wasn't great from what I heard, it was just a way for him to just get the idea out. Because we sort of talked about this ahead of time, where it's like the people that are listening to your message, they don't care how your sound is. And if they do care, then maybe they're not the right person. And so, because it's like, wouldn't you rather do the thing and have the quality be good in terms of the value of the conversation than have every piece be perfect?
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that also inspires me about doing this project about inspiration is I love finding out how people make a U-turn in their lives. I love story. I love to listen to how people go from here to here. But then when there's something that's really either big or small, how do they make that turn? What makes them turn around and do something different? So there's inspiration is in there, but there's also some other pieces too. So I'm interested in fleshing that out inside of just talking to people. I mean, that also really inspires me to have this one-on-one with someone and really ask them questions and, well, tell me about this and tell me about that.
I cannot wait for your podcast. Okay, so I am writing down right now your episodes. We're going to talk about them.
All right, I have my pen too.
Yeah, this is so great. So it's the Inspiration Project. Is that what it's going to be called, or what's going to be the name?
Right now, that's there, but I'm totally open.
Yeah, and that's what's great, is that when you create, then you got to see it when we set up the other podcast and Callcast, because we've done this before. And then what's nice is you're still kind of in that place of really waiting for the challenge, I think, right? Where it's like you're waiting to start, which is great. I think that's beautiful, because that's why I'm doing the challenge, is to help people that want to be kind of guided in the process and maybe have me hold your hand through it a little bit more.
That's right.
Yeah. And then what was cool, though, by you getting that first one set up, you were able to now get in tune with what you really want. Had you not created the first one, maybe this wouldn't even be something you might not even be here now, because you already were moving and you got to feel into it. And you're like, wait, maybe I want to do this first.
That's right. That's exactly right. It just came to me that if I got facile in this, then the relationship one would take on a whole other realm, because Steve is not really interested in learning anything about anything like that. So just willing partner. So this individually feels easier somehow.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. So I have your episodes. So we have 4. We're going to brainstorm some more.
Lucky girl.
Yeah, no, it's great. So one episode, and I don't know which is first, but we'll just we're throwing it up right now. We're just in the air, and we're going to see what sticks. But one episode will be just you talking about how to open up a channel to the whispers of our heart. And I just think that's such a beautiful topic to explore. What do you think about that as a topic?
I love it. There's so much available for resource material about it, along with my own experience, along with people's experience. It's thank you.
Do you have someone in mind that you would want to talk to about it?
Oh, let's see. Sure. I have a few people in mind that I would speak to. Specifically, my friend Callie. She is the wife of the minister of the spiritual center we go to. And she is very in touch with intuition and being directed, no fuss. She's just like that. So I think Callie would probably be my person for that.
So cool. And so what's cool is you could do a solo episode if you feel like you're able to. I struggle with solo episodes still. To me, when I'm able to set up an interview, that's the easiest way for me to go. But the nice thing about that is, again, what I said earlier, you figure out how you can move, right? Some people can do solo episodes all day, but they can't interview people. Other people like me, I can interview people all day long. Literally, I could talk from morning till night and I could be doing these interviews and I love it. But a solo episode, I'm crying. No, I'm not crying. It's okay, but it's harder for me.
I right now, that's how that feels to me too. What am I going to talk about for, I don't know. I can barely do a 5-minute speech without like,
yeah. And the times that it does work, I can't do a solo episode and sit at my mic and my computer. The only time I do them is if I'm in my car. That's how I get the solo episodes out because I'm in a different brain way of thinking or I'm walking. It's either those two things. It's kind of interesting. That's why I have Podcasts Anywhere Week, which is going to be to encourage people to go to different places so you can kind of see where you are able to do those kinds of episodes.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. So another episode is going to be what is joy and what does that really mean? What do you think about that one?
Perfect.
Who do you think you would want to interview about that topic?
I would like to interview my friend Elizabeth because she is walking joy, even in the midst of, right now, she's in the midst of some big life challenges, but still, she's a little joy bunny.
I love that.
Well, gosh, my daughter, Sasha, she is walking joy. When she comes in a room, but then when she leaves the room,
amazing. So you have 2 interviews for that one.
Yeah.
That's great. And then another episode. So right now we really have 3 episodes, right? Because you have the one, you mentioned the one friend, and then the joy, you've got 2 people, your daughter, and then Elizabeth. Okay, another episode, we'll just say topic, not episode, because now we're getting into multiple, is the U-turn in your life and talking about people who have had a U-turn and what they've done with it. What do you think about that?
Brilliant. I mean, so much. I mean, everyone's had a U-turn.
Yeah.
Whether they know it or not. And maybe when they start to look, they can then distinguish that is where I turned it around.
You know who I think would be amazing to interview for this would be Gregory in our group. He's the president of the Toastmasters group. He's a really good person to connect because he gets my mind going in a whole nother level. And I think that would be a really cool way to help you see who's next because he had a big U-turn. He quit his job in finance after so many years. And that's where his U-turn really started.
That's great. Really great. I enjoy his podcast too.
Yeah. Dare to Dream for anyone that wants to check it out. And you mentioned something in the beginning. I didn't know I was going to do this with you, so I did not write it down in the beginning. So I'm just going to go off of my memories. Just so you guys know, I had no idea I was doing this with Francine. We were going to just talk about having your hand raised and then the glass.
I said to my family yesterday, I'm like, I'm doing a podcast with Stacey. I'm really excited. I don't know really what we're going to talk about because I just said one thing.
No. That's what's so cool about this. And then all of a sudden I'm in the timing of the Start a Podcast Challenge. And I've actually been saying, but I didn't even connect it together until you got on. I've been saying I want to interview maybe a couple people before they even start, just to kind of get in their head before, because I do celebration interviews after, but they've already succeeded and they've achieved. And so they're not in the same headspace as they were when they're starting. Because I think people think when you're starting something new and they see these people that have done all these cool things, they think that they're not scared. I mentioned this earlier, but it is so true. They think they know exactly what they're doing. They think that they're not scared. And so for them to hear you talk right now about that window, the glass thing, and to go through this, I think it's so cool because who knows what's going to happen 6 months from now. Anything could happen. You could do your 10 episodes. You could have the best time in your life. You might turn it into a book or you might turn it into a program. Or it could be this podcast that has 30 episodes that people are listening to actively. We don't know, but by you starting, that's how we're going to find out which way it's going to go.
Yes. And I think another word that's a big one is doubt. So if there's fear underneath the doubt, but it's really that's the first thing that you just have is the doubt of, can I, what? Oh, I don't know. All the things that fill doubt. And once you muddy the water with doubt, so you have an intention and the intention is pure and good. And then once you start putting in the doubt, just dilutes it.
Yeah.
Doubt is a big one for me.
I think actually that would be interesting. I wonder, because I'm just thinking now as you're talking, an episode on you and the glass example, looking through the glass, and if maybe, and doubt could be a whole separate one, but I almost wonder if that could be mixed in a little bit. So doubt could be its whole separate episode, or you could do an episode on you looking through the glass and what that feels like. Because I think when people hear that, number one, it's going to be good for you to say it out loud, which you've been doing, but saying it in the lens of your podcast so people kind of can feel where you're at from the beginning. And then the other thing, I think, when you actually are speaking to it, you could go even deeper into how you feel and whether what's coming up is a doubt that's coming up or is it something else?
Right. And another piece would be actually feeling sorry for yourself. Like, I don't have what's over there. So self-pity. So, it's all just a stopping. It's almost like prison to have that limitation.
Yeah. So I have a few more episodes for you that you're not even going to believe these are episodes, but really, I just want to show you how easy this is. So another episode could be you talking about the book Big Magic and what that's meant for you and how you have taken the lessons from that book into your life. And if you wanted to level it up one more, you can invite a friend that's also read that book and then talk about it with a friend or whoever, it doesn't matter, anyone in the Toastmasters group or anyone that you know, someone in your coaching group, and talk about it. And you could do that with The Artist's Way. You could do that with any of the books you mentioned, because I don't think people realize how easy it is when you create a space like this to talk about something that you found valuable and meaningful. And when you're able to share it, that's a perfect episode to add meaning and value to somebody's day.
Yes. Yes to it all.
And I skipped over this, but the very beginning, I was mentioning how I wasn't writing it down in the beginning, but I forgot to say what I was going to say. It was something about inspiration. That's a whole nother episode, is what turns on someone's inspiration. For me, what I would talk about on your podcast would be, I get inspired when I'm in the middle of something and I feel stuck, and then I can just step away from that thing. I never used to do this. I was always in hustle culture, in the fire, walking through, not taking breaks, just constantly in it. And I want to say I was successful, but I was golden handcuff successful. I was very limited in how I was very depleted always. But when I became expansive and really opened up to the world, it was when I actually shut my computer and I turn off the phone, whatever it is that is kind of happening in that moment that is a fire. And then I take space from it. And whether I go for a walk or I go in the kayak or whatever I do, it just helps me then breathe. And then sometimes that's when I will get on my phone and leave a voice note. And then when I'm able to listen back to the recording, it helps me process and come up with a plan for whatever it is that I'm in the middle of.
That's brilliant. Take space.
And there's something about that recording. This actually just happened. I was doing a vision. Oh, this is actually such a good example. Oh my gosh. Okay. I haven't spoken this out loud yet because it just happened Saturday. So I'm planning this vision casting workshop, and I'm doing it with my holistic coach, who's a retired psychologist, Dr. Nancy DeAndrade. Yeah, who's amazing. You know exactly who she is. And then Deb Lins, who's a community member, and she's also a psychologist. And I have a psychology degree, but I don't have any other credentials, right? So I'm kind of leaning into them for planning the workshop because they're both amazing, unbelievable, beyond unbelievable. But I think I had imposter syndrome while I'm in the workshop.
Oh, syndrome. Oh.
And so I'm letting them sort of guide it. And then Dr. Nancy was the one, I think they both sort of stopped me because Deb has been moved by my work, right? So she knows what the formula can do for her. And then Dr. Nancy has seen it. And I think they both were like, why aren't we using the formula to plan this workshop? And all of a sudden I'm like, I have no idea why we're not using the formula. And I was like, okay, that was interesting. And then all of a sudden I kind of fed into my gift. And then we were able to do the thing. We planned it. Then last minute, I'm like, do you guys mind if we just do it like a normal expert panel? Because now all of a sudden, because remember, I had imposter syndrome. And so I'm feeding into them. So I wasn't even doing a normal expert panel like I do for my other challenges. So anyway, we were able to get on a last minute expert panel where we basically hit record. And I had recorded the thing because I wanted to listen to our stuff so I could take notes, but let's hit record for the podcast. And we did this amazing 30-minute little expert panel for the vision casting workshop. And then, I don't know, it's so funny. I'm listening back and then I'm able to create everything between all of their feedback and then my strategy, which is the dares. So then I have this, I'm planning my dares like normal. I don't need anyone's opinion now because I already know this stuff. I know how to make people move. And while they're both amazing and I used their ideas to create this, I was able to use my system that works really well to be able to implement it. I just thought that was so interesting how I was so easily pushed into that. And they're both so loving and so kind and to remind me of that. They saw it and they reminded me of it. And then that got me back into my power again.
That's a really good point because I think when we're in that place of imposter syndrome, which, I know that one really good.
Yeah.
We need a relationship to help us out of it. We can't get out of it ourselves unless we have this level of discipline to have a sense of self that's going to talk to us.
Yeah.
Which we can do. But when we have that loving team, that's really what pulls us out of it.
What would be your number one thing that you're excited about with doing the Start a Podcast Challenge and being a part of it?
My number one excitement would be to actually be started.
Yay!
And actually into something that I wanted to do and being involved with the community, being involved with every aspect. So that would be my number one excitement.
That's so great. I'd love to also hear what your number one piece of advice for people would be on you doing the thing.
If you can just take one little action towards something, just it could be the smallest action. It directs your energy towards that. So if you look at everything as being gardens, so we have many gardens and planting seeds in those gardens, and they can be gardens of fear, or they could be gardens of manifestation, relation. There's so many. If we trust in that, there's that seed, and we trust in that seed and just be part of that. So I would say just take an action, just one action towards what you're wanting. And don't worry about if it's something little or you don't know where it's going to end, but just take the action.
Can you tell everyone if they want to follow along with your journey and kind of see where you're at? Is there a place they can reach out to you?
I would say right now my email, and that would be intervalsofgrace@gmail.com.
Beautiful. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for coming on. This was so amazing to have you.
Thank you, Stacey. I love being with you. I love this opportunity. I love when we get together. So you are an amazing light. You are doing amazing work. And it's far reaching. You have no idea where it's going to go.
Thank you. And for the listeners, do the thing. Don't wait for an opportunity. Create it.
Absolutely. Yeah.